I think it's safe to say that Duolingo is hands down the most popular language learning app, and it's not particularly close. With over 500 million downloads in the App Store, it basically dominates every other language learning app. And at this point, the word Duolingo is basically synonymous with language learning. And while it's been that way for probably over a decade, it was during the pandemic that the app's popularity really took off. But it was not without its critics. So my plan today is to discuss the AI first controversy, talking with the head linguist at one of Duolingo's competitors, while I examine whether or not the problems with Duolingo are skin deep, or whether the app is fundamentally broken. Allow me to introduce Duolingo CEO and co-founder Luis von Ahn. He's a really smart dude who grew up in a poor family in a poor country with a single mom who did basically everything in her power to make sure that he got a good education. And he talks about his mission with Duolingo as being to turn education from a tool that keeps rich people rich into something that's accessible for everyone. And if your goal is to learn a language, Duolingo is honestly probably the first tool that comes to mind. It's free, it's accessible, and you probably already have it downloaded on your phone. And while Duolingo might have the reputation for not being necessarily the best language learning tool, I will say that I've personally gotten a lot of use out of it. And while it's not the best tool in a vacuum, we don't actually live in a vacuum, and sometimes I think the best tool for the job is the one that you have on hand. Additionally, there's definitely tons of strategies that you can implement to make your learning on Duolingo more effective, and that goes for any language app for that matter. As a matter of fact, in an upcoming video, I'm actually going to be seeing how fast I can go through one of Duolingo's courses, and I'll see how much of a benefit I get from it. So stay tuned for that one. When it comes to creating an app to teach people a language, there's a couple of fundamental hurdles that you come across. First of all, it's very hard to get anyone to stick to any habit. Now, you can do it with self-discipline, which can be harnessed through sheer motivation to do something. But self-discipline is a rare resource, and motivation is fleeting. So rather than relying on its users bringing self-discipline or motivation to their language learning, Duolingo tries to lessen that burden through one magical word: gamification.
What we've done is that we've used the same psychological techniques that Instagram, TikTok, or mobile games use to keep people engaged. But in this case, we use them to keep people engaged, but with education.
The idea is to keep you so hooked to the app that you keep coming back day after day to extend your streak and keep progressing through the app, regardless of whether or not you feel particularly motivated to learn French that day. But by bypassing user motivation and by creating a game that basically incentivizes you to play it, Duolingo can give the impression of progress, whereas in reality, improvement is slow. In other words, as you rack up achievements and progress through the game, you may get the impression that you're learning more than you actually are. Interestingly, in an interview with The Verge, Luis von Ahn does specifically say that they prioritize gamification when it comes to the creation of the app.
Do you think that there's a conflict between gamification and engagement, the things that you're historically successful at, and education?
Yes, there is.
How do you manage that conflict?
Very easily.
Okay.
Always go with engagement.
Really?
Yes. I'll give you many arguments, but the one that works the most is this. Doesn't matter how effective you are, you can't teach somebody that's not here.
And that's it.
That's it. People leave, and then the reality is, it's not always true that engagement and learning outcomes are at odds. But when they are, we usually prefer going for engagement.
In other words, prioritizing retention and keeping people on the app, keeping users coming back to the app is more important than the quality of your content, because otherwise they're not going to be there to learn it. The problem with my viewpoint, though, is that there's definitely tons of anecdotal examples of people who have insane Duolingo streaks and who have completed whole courses, but feel like they haven't gained even a basic fluency or competency in the language that they're learning. And that brings us to our second main challenge when it comes to creating a language app. People don't generally like it when you explain grammar at them. And I can personally attest to this as a person who spends an unusual amount of his time explaining grammar to people. I am, unfortunately, personally familiar with the look of someone's eyes glazing over as their mind fully disconnects from whatever linguistic topic I'm explaining to them. And so to avoid that disengagement, Duolingo avoids explicit language instruction and instead relies on implicit language instruction. The idea is that through the challenges, games, and exercises, you'll sort of internally pick up the grammar without having to have it explained to you. However, Dr. Caitlin Tagarelli, head linguist at Mango Languages, explains the downside of ignoring explicit grammar or language instruction.
There's a lot to be said for implicit learning. implicit learning, like where you're not conscious of what you're learning, tends to be a very robust way to learn and a way to really develop more automatic skills. But it can be a lot slower, it can be a lot harder. And we know from decades of research in language learning that a lot of times learners need some sort of explicit instruction.
While the exercises on Duolingo certainly can be helpful, it's not a sufficient standalone tool to really help you learn a language to a high level. Another major criticism that Duolingo has faced over the years is errors and mistakes with its lessons.
Duolingo has always been known for having little mistakes here or there.
It's definitely something that I experienced firsthand when I used Duolingo, and you can definitely find countless Reddit and other forum posts of people indicating specific grammar or other content mistakes that they found while using the app. And while a noticeable amount of errors or mistakes within a teaching app is definitely a red flag in my opinion, a certain amount of mistakes are kind of to be expected. The people making the app are only human after all, right? In case you haven't heard, in April of this year, Duolingo made an announcement that essentially they would be an AI-first company moving forward. And as you might expect, or maybe have even heard, that announcement was met with a huge backlash from users and now former users of the app. One of the reasons I think that this announcement was so poorly received is that there's been a general consensus among users that there's been a declining quality in the content featured in the app. So more frequent errors and content that honestly just isn't that interesting. So the head of the company is saying things like, we'd rather move urgently and take occasional hits on quality than move slowly and miss the moment. Yeah, that just didn't sit well with the users of the app. So basically it came off as a company cutting costs while presenting an inferior product to their users and also trying to squeeze every dollar that they can out of those same users with increasing costs for premium services.
You deserve to have lower quality AI-generated slop if it means that Duolingo can create more content, thus keeping you on the app longer, thus making more money off of you. You deserve it.
And the rest of the posts kind of just came off as an after-the-fact rationalization.
At this point, I'm like, look, this is what I think we should do. I can tell you reasons that I can probably coming up with after the fact, but the reality is my gut says we should do that. I mainly do things with gut feeling, and then I tell people a justification afterwards, but everybody around me knows that these justifications are after the fact. They're not rational thoughts.
Okay, so I don't personally agree with a lot of the ways that Duolingo has gone about things, especially in recent years, and that it's clear that it's not the most efficient way to learn a language. I will say that if you personally enjoy using Duolingo, and if you feel like you're progressing with it, that's definitely valid. While it is definitely possible to learn things on Duolingo, the app itself creates a series of incentives that aren't always aligned and at times might even be opposed to genuine language learning. And if you're motivated enough to stick to learning a language without the need for heavy gamification, there's definitely other apps that I would recommend over Duolingo, including Mango, which I talked about earlier. Speaking of which, special thanks to Kaylin for the interview. If you're interested in seeing an extended version, I'll be posting that somewhere at some point. So if you're interested in that, subscribe and follow me on the places, and see you on the next one. Bye. Interestingly, in an interview with The Verge, Luis von Ahn goes on to explain his prioritization of gamification. That's a hard series of words. His prioritization of gamification.